Hey everyone, my name is Alexa and welcome to ACE International History Review 1.1. The big question for this review is why was imperialism a significant force for late 19th century Europe? So let's get into it. In the 16th century, European countries believed in mercantilism, the belief that there is only a limited amount of wealth in the world. This encouraged imperialism and wars. However, by the 19th century, countries began to drift away from mercantilism and gain new motives for imperial expansion. The European industry had expanded rapidly. Goods were now mass-produced, and it was essential for businessmen to find new sources of raw materials and markets to sell their goods in. In particular, Britain had many economic advantages, so they were able to produce goods more quickly and at cheaper costs than other countries. Nevertheless, in the second half of the 19th century, Britain began to face growing competition from other European countries and the USA, which was rapidly emerging as a leading economic power. By the end of the 19th century, France developed the second most powerful navy worldwide, while Britain claimed the number one spot. Moreover, competition throughout countries became more popular due to the Long Depression. This was a period of intense deflation, which greatly impacted economies all over the world. So European countries began competing for overseas possession to gain guaranteed markets for their products and exploit large quantities of raw materials that could be found in Africa and Asia. Then, by 1871, European countries realized that there was little room for expansion in Europe itself, so countries began gaining overseas territory to increase their wealth, power, prestige, and influence. In the late 19th century, an increase in nationalism throughout Europe began. Germany and Italy wanted to establish power. France wanted to recover from its humiliating defeat in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871. And Britain kept bragging about their powerful navy. This caused the British government to adopt the Naval Defence Act of 1889, which aimed to ensure that Britain remained at least as powerful as the combined strength of the next two largest navies, French and the USSR at the time. European governments also wanted European power to spread their country's language, culture, and beliefs. For example, French missionaries spread Christianity and French culture. Additionally, countries expanded for political motives. By 1870, industrialization led to the emergence of a large working class, demanding social, economic, and political reform. Governments saw imperialism as a way to distract attention away from this issue and unite people behind a common aim, the development of their country through overseas expansion. Countries also saw imperialism as a strategic way to gain control of desired areas that would make trade routes easier. The period from 1871 to 1914 witnessed the rise of new imperialism. This focused on a new geographical scope. Previously, imperialism largely focused on North and South America. However, new imperialism centered on Africa and Asia. Additionally, there was a real attempt this time to maintain peaceful relations. For example, the Treaty of Berlin in 1885 laid down ground rules for expansion in Africa. Lastly, earlier imperialism was carried out only by the main European powers. This time, they were carried out by these powers, but also by the USA, Japan, and Russia. Nevertheless, social and technological factors made new imperialism possible. Specifically, in the 18th century, Africa was known as the white man's grave for having an outbreak of diseases like malaria. New medicine inventions like the inventions of quinine, which was developed by the French, proved to be an effective treatment of malaria. This allowed imperial expansion into Africa without the worry of diseases. Technological advancements also facilitated new imperialism by establishing advanced rifles and ships that would allow countries to take over overseas land. Additionally, in the 19th century, scientists began developing theories claiming that white people were racially superior compared to Asians and Africans. So, European nationalisms used this as a way to justify imperialism by claiming that they were helping to improve the lives of the local people. This later became known as the white man's burden. The last quarter of the 19th century was called the scramble for Africa. In this time period, European nations were rushing to take over as much land as they could from Africa. In 1870, only 10% of Africa was under European control, while by the 1900s, 90% of Africa was under European control. Britain was interested in imperialism for exploring trade routes, which is why they took over areas of Egypt and South Africa. Britain then found gold and valuable resources in the Transversal and inland Africa, causing them to secure as much of Africa as they could to prevent other countries from taking these resources. Britain accounted for more than 30% of the African population. The USA was critical of Britain for this and claimed that they bit off more than they could chew. France was active in the north and west of Africa and saw imperialism as a way of showing power and prestige after their humiliating defeat in the Franco-Prussian War. Moreover, Belgium just gained independence in the 1830s, but King Leopold II of Belgium was willing to use his own money to imperialize since he believed it would enhance his country's wealth and prestige. Portugal didn't want to be left behind in the scramble, so they gained areas of Angola and Mozambique. Since Germany only became a unified nation in 1871, they were left with control over small areas of Africa that weren't as profitable, since they were late to the scramble. Nevertheless, European imperialism had an enormous effect on Africa and its people. European countries brought many benefits, such as developed states, education, systems of transportation and communication, medical care, and hospitals, and more efficient methods of farming. However, this all came at a price. To begin, Africa was randomly partitioned, causing ethnic groups and tribes to separate. Additionally, many chiefs or kings were killed. Europeans quickly took control over the Africans, undermining their culture and introducing Western-style education, clothes, buildings, and religion. The introduction of money also completely changed the African economy. Also, since Europeans exploited the natural resources, Africa was left with nothing, preventing them from developing industries of their own. While some individuals opposed this new idea of imperialism, most supported it. Beginning with Britain, they were the first ones to possess a vast area of land overseas. Support for imperialism was encouraged at a young age through the introduction of compulsory state education and newspapers. Britain also used propaganda when claiming that Britain had a duty to free slaves and end the practice of slavery in Africa. They also tried to justify imperialism by saying that they were carrying out their moral responsibility to bring civilization to other races, a responsibility that Rudyard Kipling described as the white man's burden in a poem published in 1889. For France, it was the government that played a huge role in encouraging support for imperialism. They thought that gaining overseas territory would be a way of restoring French pride after the humiliating defeat of the Franco-Prussian War. They also believed in the white man's burden. As for Germany, they only became a unified country in 1871, so they were reluctant to be involved in imperial expansion. However, under pressure from businessmen, the Chancellor began taking interest. This provided a uniting factor in economic benefits for Germany. While many people supported imperialism, a number of religious leaders, intellectuals, and writers argued that it was morally wrong to seize control of territories that belonged to local inhabitants. So that is all for ACE International History Unit 1.1 review. Stay tuned for Unit 1.2 coming soon.